I turned 91 this spring, and somewhere between blowing out the candles and trying to remember where I left my reading glasses, I realized something. Almost everything I spent my 30s worrying about never mattered. Now, before you think this is another old man telling you to live, laugh, love, don't. Because if I'd known these 11 things when I was 30, I would have saved myself a failed business, thousands of sleepless nights, one friendship I still miss, and almost losing the woman who loved me more than I deserved. I'll give you all 11, I promise. But the last one, the one I didn't understand until I was nearly 90, cost me more years than all the others put together. If you leave after number 10, you'll miss the lesson that changed the way I see every morning I wake up. So stay with me. At my age, I don't waste words. My name is Thomas Walker. I was born in the winter of 1935. Back then, our little farmhouse sat at the end of a dirt road in eastern Tennessee. No air conditioning, no internet, no microwave humming in the kitchen. Just the sound of crickets at night and the front porch creaking every time my father came home from work. Folks today call that the good old days. Truth is, they weren't good. They were simply ours. We didn't have much. My father fixed tractors. My mother stretched one chicken into 3 dinners. When my shoes wore out, she'd patch them instead of buying another pair. I used to be embarrassed by that. Funny thing, I'd give just about anything to watch her sew one more patch. Funny how life changes what you think is valuable. But I wasn't always this reflective. At 30, I thought I had life figured out. I had a decent job, a young wife, a little boy who thought I hung the moon. And I believed the biggest mistake a man could make was slowing down. I couldn't have been more wrong. I'll tell you about the day I almost lost everything because of that belief. Not yet. First, I need to tell you about the first lesson, because without it, the rest won't make sense. Lesson 1. Stop trying to impress people who won't remember your name in 5 years. When I was 30, I bought a truck I couldn't afford. Bright red, chrome everywhere, beautiful machine. The monthly payment nearly swallowed us whole. Did I need it? Lord, no. But my neighbor had bought a new truck. The man across town had bought an even nicer one. And somewhere along the way, I started measuring my worth by what sat in my driveway. Every Saturday, I'd wash that truck until you could shave in the reflection. People would walk by and say, "Tom, that's a fine-looking truck." Those words felt good for about 10 seconds. Then I'd need another compliment, another nod, another reason to feel like I mattered. You know what's funny? I can't remember the names of half the men I was trying to impress. Most of them are gone now. The truck rusted away decades ago. The payments, those I remember. So here's something nobody told 30-year-old me. Approval is rented. Peace is owned. One disappears the moment people stop looking. The other stays when the house gets quiet. I wish I'd understood that sooner. Because chasing admiration is like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. It never stays full. Now, the second lesson didn't come from money. It came from one sentence my father spoke the week before he died. I've carried those words for 40 years, and I didn't understand what he meant until much later. I'll tell you what he said. But first, I have to tell you what kind of man he was. My father wasn't affectionate, didn't hug much, didn't say, "I love you." His way of loving us was fixing whatever was broken. The porch, the tractor, the fence. If something needed doing, he did it. One rainy afternoon, I watched him spend nearly 3 hours repairing an old wooden gate. I remember thinking, why not just buy another one? He looked at me and smiled. Because, son, some things are worth fixing. I thought he was talking about the gate. He wasn't. I didn't realize that until years later. Lesson 2. Don't throw people away because they're difficult. Nowadays, we replace everything. Phones, cars, furniture. Some folks even replace marriages the moment things become uncomfortable. At 30, I had that same habit. Not with marriages, with friendships. The minute someone disappointed me, I quietly walked away. No conversation, no forgiveness, just gone. It felt easier. Until one day, I looked around and realized I'd become very good at being alone. There's one man I still think about. His name was Frank. We argued over something so small, I honestly can't remember what it was anymore. Pride stepped in. Neither of us picked up the phone. Years passed. One afternoon, I saw his obituary in the newspaper. That was it. No goodbye, no apology, just ink on a page. You know what hurts the most? Not losing him. Losing the chance to tell him he mattered. If you're waiting for the perfect time to fix a relationship, you should know something. Perfect never comes. Only later. And later has buried more apologies than any cemetery ever could. Now, before I tell you lesson number 3, I need to confess something. For almost 20 years, I believed success meant providing for my family, working longer hours, making more money, being home less. Every man around me said the same thing. We wore exhaustion like a medal. Until one ordinary Tuesday, my little boy asked me a question. One question. Just 8 words. Those 8 words still echo in my head today. And when I tell you what he asked, you'll understand why everything I believed about being a good father began to fall apart. When my son was 8 years old, he stood in the driveway one Tuesday evening, still wearing his little baseball glove. I had missed another game. As I climbed out of the truck, he looked at me and asked, "Dad, are you coming home tomorrow or just sleeping here?" 8 words, that was all. He wasn't angry. He wasn't crying. He was honestly trying to understand. Because somewhere along the way, our house had become the place where I showered, changed clothes, and disappeared again. I hugged him that night, told him Daddy was working hard, doing it for the family. And in my mind, that was true. But children don't measure love in paychecks. They measure it in Tuesdays, in bedtime stories, in catching a baseball, in whether you showed up. It took me decades to understand that. Lesson 3. The people you love spell love differently than you do. I thought love meant sacrifice. My wife thought love meant conversation. My son thought love meant presence. None of us were wrong. We were simply speaking different languages. For years, I gave my family everything, except the one thing they actually wanted: me. There's a photograph sitting in my living room today. It's faded around the edges. My son is missing his 2 front teeth. I'm holding a fishing rod. We're both laughing so hard, neither of us is looking at the camera. Do you know why that picture matters? Because I can't remember what I bought that year. I don't remember my salary. I don't remember the truck I drove. But I remember that afternoon on the lake. Memory has a funny way of sorting what's important. It quietly throws away everything that didn't matter. That photograph almost didn't happen. Because the night before, I was about to cancel. Again. I'll tell you why I didn't. Because the person who changed my mind wasn't my wife. It was a man I'd barely spoken to before, and his advice followed me for the next 60 years. His name was Walter. Worked in the machine shop. Quiet fellow. Never raised his voice. Always ate lunch alone. One afternoon, he noticed me filling out overtime for the 3rd weekend in a row. He looked across the table and said, "Tom, your job will replace you before your chair gets cold." Then he took another bite of his sandwich. Didn't explain, didn't lecture. Just those few words. At 35, I thought he was lazy. At 91, I think he was one of the wisest men I ever met. Lesson 4. Stop confusing busy with important. Busy is answering one more email. Important is calling your mother. Busy is another meeting. Important is sitting on the porch with your wife for 15 quiet minutes. Busy fills your calendar. Important fills your life. I chased busy for years. The strange thing is, the busier I became, the emptier I felt. One day after retiring, I found an old notebook. Inside, I'd written hundreds of appointments, meetings, deliveries, deadlines. Not one page said, "Watch the sunset." Funny, I had time to write down everything I had to do, but never what I wanted to remember. If you're under 40, let me tell you something. Your calendar tells you how you're spending your days, but your memories will tell you how you spent your life. Those are not always the same thing. Now, the 5th lesson came from a mistake I made with money. Not because I lost it, because I worshipped it. There's a difference. And the moment I realized it was standing in a hospital hallway with exactly $87 in my checking account. I'd never felt richer. That probably doesn't make sense yet. Give me a minute. Lesson 5. Money is a tool. Never make it your master. I grew up poor, real poor. So when I finally started earning decent money, I became afraid of losing it. Fear makes people do strange things. I worked holidays, skipped vacations, delayed dreams, always telling myself, next year we'd travel. Next year we'd rest. Next year, I'd finally slow down. Then, one afternoon, My wife sat beside me on the porch. She didn't ask for jewelry. She didn't ask for a bigger house. She said, "Tom, when does next year become this year?" I didn't have an answer, because fear had quietly stolen my ability to enjoy what we'd already built. Money can buy comfort. It cannot buy another spring with the people you love. I learned that far too late. Speaking of late, there's one apology I carried around for almost 20 years before I finally made it. I was terrified to make that phone call. I kept rehearsing what I'd say. Then life interrupted. The person I wanted to apologize to was suddenly gone. That regret still visits me some nights, and it leads to the sixth lesson. Lesson 6. Pride charges interest. Every day you delay saying, "I'm sorry," the debt gets bigger. I used to think apologizing meant losing. Now I know refusing to apologize is how you lose people. Some victories aren't worth winning. Some arguments cost far more than they're worth. If someone crossed your mind while I was saying this, don't ignore that feeling. Life has a habit of removing opportunities without asking permission. There's one final story before we stop today. It happened on my 70th birthday. A little girl, my granddaughter, asked me a question no adult had ever asked. I laughed when she said it. Then I went home and cried. Because children have a way of seeing truths grown-ups spend decades avoiding. Her question became Lesson 7, and I'll tell you exactly what she asked next time. Because that single conversation changed how I think about growing old, and it prepared me for the most important lesson of my entire life. My granddaughter was 9 years old when she asked me the question. She was sitting beside me on this very porch, swinging her legs because they still couldn't quite reach the floor. Children have a way of asking questions adults stopped asking years ago. She looked up at me and said, "Grandpa, when were you happiest?" I almost answered right away. I was going to say, the day I got promoted, or the day we bought our first house, or maybe the day I finally paid off the mortgage. But before the words came out, I realized something. None of those memories made my heart beat a little faster. Instead, I thought about teaching my son how to ride a bicycle. I remembered dancing with my wife in our tiny kitchen while dinner burned on the stove. I remembered fishing before sunrise with my brother, when neither of us caught a thing, but laughed the entire morning. That's when it hit me. The happiest moments of my life weren't the ones I planned. They were the ones I was fully present for. Lesson 9. Don't postpone joy waiting for the perfect season. For years I told myself, I'll enjoy life after this project, after this promotion, after retirement. The trouble is, life keeps handing you another after. If happiness always lives in tomorrow, it never gets a chance to live today. There is no perfect season. There is only this one. If the sun is shining, sit outside for 10 minutes. If your grandson wants to throw a baseball, say yes. If your wife asks you to take a walk, leave the dishes. Those little moments don't look important while they're happening. One day, they become your favorite memories. There's something else I wish someone had told 30-year-old Tom. Actually, I wish someone had shouted it loud enough that I couldn't ignore it. Because I spent far too many years trying to become someone else. Lesson 10. Stop comparing your life to people who aren't living yours. Comparison is a strange thief. It doesn't always steal your money, it steals your gratitude. I remember standing in my neighbor's driveway, admiring his new house. I drove home feeling like a failure. Then, years later, I learned he was drowning in debt and barely sleeping at night. Meanwhile, I had a wife who loved me, children who still wanted to spend time with me, a little porch where we drank coffee together every morning. I had everything I needed, but I couldn't see it because I was staring over someone else's fence. Success looks different from the inside than it does from the street. Don't let someone else's highlight reel convince you your ordinary life isn't extraordinary. One day, you'll discover that ordinary was the miracle. Now, there's one last thing. The lesson I promised you at the beginning. The one that took me nearly 90 years to understand. It isn't about money. It isn't about work. It isn't even about family. Those things matter. But this matters even more. Lesson 11. Life doesn't ask whether you're ready. It simply keeps moving. At 78, I lost my wife. The house became painfully quiet. For weeks, I caught myself listening for footsteps that would never come again. One morning, I poured 2 cups of coffee before realizing there was only one person left to drink it. I stood there, looking at that second cup, and I finally understood something. Love doesn't end because someone is gone, but neither should your life. For a while, I waited. I waited to feel better. I waited to feel motivated. I waited for grief to disappear. It never did. What changed wasn't the grief. It was me. I stopped waiting. I planted tomatoes in the backyard. I volunteered at the community center. I started calling old friends instead of hoping they'd call me. Little by little, life found its way back. Not because the pain disappeared, but because purpose returned. You don't heal by standing still. You heal by taking the next small step, and then another. If I could sit across from the 30-year-old version of myself today, I'd tell him this. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to impress everyone. You don't need to have all the answers. Spend more evenings on the porch. Take more photographs. Forgive faster. Say, I love you, before you think it's the right moment. Call your parents. Play with your children while they still ask you to. Hold your spouse's hand when you're walking through the grocery store. Don't rush through ordinary Tuesdays. One day, you'll realize they were the best days you ever had. 91 years sounds like a long time. Trust me, it isn't. Life doesn't move slowly. It only feels that way while you're living it. Then, one morning, you wake up wondering where all those years went. So don't waste today chasing a tomorrow that isn't promised. Live this one completely. Before I leave you, I'd like to ask you something. How old are you? And where are you listening from? I genuinely enjoy seeing people from all over the world gathering here to share stories and lessons with one another. And if there's someone you've been meaning to call, or a conversation you've been putting off, don't wait for the perfect day. Make today the day. If this old grandfather shared something that stayed with you, I'd be honored if you joined me again. Every week, we'll sit together on this porch, reflect on another chapter of life, and remind each other that wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about never being too old to keep learning. Until next time, take care of the people you love. And don't forget to take care of yourself, too.